Everybody feels, no matter where we were born or how we were raised, we are all capable of possessing emotions. What tends to make us different from one another are the ways in which we express and experience these feelings. There are so many people in this world, and when there are this many stories to choose from, it's almost mesmerizing how we still find ways to make songs, write movies, or write books about characters that only ever exist in our minds. We don't have to, but we do. When somebody has an idea that they want to share with a wider audience, the question becomes, how do we get people to care? What intentions do we have with this idea? To answer this, people with all sorts of backgrounds and experiences come together, each with their own set of questions. Concept artists work to bring an idea into a visual space. Fashion designers work to use clothes as a way for people to interpret a character based off of what they wear. But I want to target a different sense. I want to talk about the musicians who help us feel the emotional significance of scenes in ways that more often than not go over our heads the first time we watch them. Now, there's a very obvious way in which we know music has impact. If you put funny sounding music over a chase scene, it loses the suspense. But how do we use music to tell a story? How do we intertwine the characters, the plot, and the music? And what does it say about the way that we view the arts? How many of you here are familiar with the movie Rio? Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, Rio is an animated movie about a rare domestic blue macaw named Blue, who journeys to Rio de Janeiro from his home in Minnesota in the United States in order to save his species. Things go wrong and he has to face his fears in order to free and find himself. This movie has a really entertaining story and a plot that is backed by the gorgeous score. The music in this movie is so central to the identity of the film that right at the beginning we hear what will be the most notable leitmotif throughout the duration. A leitmotif is a musical sequence that is linked to a specific element of a film. They can be attached to characters or to story themes. The leitmotif in this movie is actually sung by the rufous-bellied thrush, the national bird of Brazil. To really show you how this can have a positive impact in the overall experience of a film, I asked our productions leader, Myra, to help create a recreation of the opening number of this piece, in which the leitmotif is played. Here it is now with the main theme, followed by the instrumentation. We use free bird call samples and also layered various digital percussion instruments to really achieve the deeply polyrhythmic effect.
All the birds out of feather do what we love most of all.
It's not it's not perfect, but I think it was pretty good. Now, you'll be able to notice how the music uses traditionally Latin American instruments to really set the scene for audiences. It also layers the instruments before the lyrics finally greet us, creating a sense of depth and also intriguing audiences further into the universe of the film. The music in this movie works because it is so heavily linked with the characters and the story itself. The leitmotifs playing in the background when Blue and his friends are set free, or when Blue learns to fly, spoiler, is what makes these moments 10 times more memorable and meaningful. So, now what? You're probably sitting there going, "Sweetheart, that's all great, but can you tell me why I care?" And I'll tell you that there is absolutely and undoubtedly no reason. And that's why I believe you should. Recently, I've noticed how people are tending to view the arts as a luxury, something that only those with time and money can even try to engage with. I'll see people online pick apart somebody else's expression of self with questions like, what does it do? What's the point? We seem to not value things unless they have a specific reason for being there, and I'd argue that we don't need a reason at all and that is the beauty of the arts. We've become so obsessed with things doing something tangible for us that we forget that they can have spiritual and emotional value as well. And this is why I view the arts as a symbol as to how we as humans are extremely aware of our own mortality. Yay! But no, seriously, if everything has to have a reason, then why do we need to be here? We weren't here for billions of years, and we won't be for possibly even longer, so then why do we do anything at all? Given our circumstances, we could just sit in one place and eat and drink enough just to survive and do nothing all day, but we don't. And that, to me, is art. Disregarding any official definition for a moment, I believe that anything that has been created or formed by passion or love or any emotion really is art. We have science because people wanted answers to their questions. People were curious. We have astronomy because people looked up at the same night sky that we see and were so fascinated they decided to study the stars. And we have visual art and music because people just wanted to express themselves more. We cared about ourselves and each other enough to let people know that they were not alone in whatever they may have been feeling. We cared about ourselves enough to want to make people feel things, even if it wasn't objectively good. The beauty of art is that it is just like everything else in that it is subjective. Rio is remembered by those who watched it when they were younger because one day someone had an idea, and then a group of people had an intention when they made something. They created a community. When things make us feel something, we don't usually forget, and art is nothing but a reflection of our emotions. Caring about things is what keeps us sane and what makes us human. You don't need to think that a movie is good or care whether or not the art style makes sense with the story. And I'm not saying we can't criticize things because that's part of growing as an artist and as a society. But we should at least respect the effort. Because yes, there are other ways to express ourselves. Yes, there are people who will never care about why the sky is blue or care why an apple falls from a tree. And yes, there are people who will watch movies regardless of whether or not the soundtrack is any good. But the fact that nobody has a reason to care or do anything at all, nobody has a single reason that can be justified against the fact that we will not be here one day, that is reason enough to keep making good art. We need art because we are art. We need intentional, well-made art because it is proof that there are people in this world that still care enough to devote their time, energy, and resources into something that the next person may feel nothing towards. So, to wrap this up, I want us all to leave here today with a newfound appreciation for one another. I want us all to be able to look at somebody else's honest work and value their passion, even if we don't care about it in the slightest. Let's be curious about their intentions and appreciate them for how human they are to have them in the first place. We're not all lucky enough to be earning a living doing what we love, but let's go home and try and find a way to do it anyway, so that we can connect with everything and everyone around us. After all, we're birds of a feather, and we have to continue to do what we love most of all.